Joe Biden was on MSNBC yesterday doing some of his famous outreach to Bernie Sanders supporters and other progressives. Let's take a listen.
Are you now reconsidering your position when it comes to single-payer health care?
Single payer will not solve that at all. The thing that is needed is, for example, we have a whole number of hospitals that are being so stretched, including rural hospitals, they're going to need more financing. That doesn't come from a single payer system. That comes from the federal government stepping up and dealing with the concerns that they have, the reimbursement that they're going to get, how they're going to be able to move forward, and how they're going to be able to provide all the needed help that are needed in their communities. This is an opportunity to look at reconstructing the healthcare system in a way that, in fact, can respond more rapidly and more effectively to these kinds of crises, because it's going to come again.
Well, it's funny, I agree with him, but I'm also like, I shouldn't be agreeing with you on healthcare policy.
Well, it's nonsensical to say, as he and many other neoliberals are saying, that coronavirus treatment should be paid for. But just imagine the insanity of, let's say you're feeling sick. You have basically pneumonia that happens to not be caused by coronavirus. And so because you were sick with the wrong illness, now you're headed towards medical bankruptcy, versus if you happen to have gotten coronavirus, then you're fine. I mean, a healthcare crisis is widespread right now, obviously, but healthcare crises happen in America all the time for people. And the fact that, this one gets covered and this one gets treatment and that one doesn't, because it doesn't happen to be the virus that we're all concerned about right now, makes absolutely no sense. But on the broader political level, first of all, let's keep in mind that already Bernie Sanders supporters are being preemptively blamed for Joe Biden potentially losing to Donald Trump. That is already happening. Washington Post did a whole piece about, we're concerned that these, intransigent Bernie supporters aren't going to come on board and Bernie's not going to do enough to bring them on board, et cetera, et cetera. You put that up against Joe Biden doing literally nothing. It's like a slap in the face, literally nothing, to try to appeal to people on their values and their principles. Like, how is that their fault that they're not being won over by, when that's the pitch?
No, I agree with you, which is that whenever you have somebody, like I said this earlier, which is that healthcare is the number one issue. People were equally split within the Democratic, not equally. More people supported the Democratic base and faithful Medicare for All than not. But pretty much everybody who didn't, they agreed with Joe Biden. Those who did, agreed with Medicare for All, overwhelmingly supported Bernie Sanders. And that was the number one issue in the entire Democratic primary. So not even throwing a bone to that. What I've actually even seen also is criticism from people who were Biden friendly, saying, look, you should at least do what you did with the free college thing and support some sort of universal coverage. I think he technically would respond to that, but I mean, whatever, through some mechanical, expand Obamacare through tax credits and exchange, whatever. Something that nobody could be able to understand. But he's not even willing to be throwing a technocratic bone where he could say, no, I will have universal coverage. Some sort of Pete Buttigieg Medicare for All who wanted. He's actually sticking solely in the Obama lane of some expanded out Obamacare coverage, but keeping the overall framework and system, which everybody hates. That's literally everybody hates the healthcare system.
Right.
And he's actually defending it. I mean, even Trump ran against the healthcare system. In terms of repealing and replacing it, rightfully criticizing deductibles and all of that. Only Biden is out there defending it because of the Obamacare legacy. That's what I don't understand.
Millions of people, as we speak, this week, right now, are losing their employer-provided health insurance. And that is the system that Joe Biden wants to stick to. Report came out saying that premiums could go up 40%. You want to have a how will you pay for it conversation? Let's have that how will you pay for it conversation. And yet in the face of that, and as the presumptive nominee, you don't take any of that evidence or reality of what's unfolding into your rhetoric. You don't move 1 inch to even throw a rhetorical bone to the fact that the most animating issue in the Democratic base right now is healthcare. I mean, number one is just beating Trump, which is why he is the presumptive nominee. But in terms of actual issues, healthcare and Medicare for All is the most animating issue. And you won't bend on that at all. You say you're going to veto it. You say you're still opposed to it. And so when I hear people, and this is the argument that's made to me all the time of well, Joe Biden's values are the same as your values. He just wants to get there in a different way. I'm like, No, they're not.
No, he doesn't.
No, they're not. They're not the same values. So I think moments like this really expose that to be the case.
I think it is right. And especially in terms of his whole reach out to the Bernie supporters. I mean, it's something that I think we talked about on the show, which is that you're always expected to bend the knee from that perspective, which is that, like Bernie,
it's on the voters.
It's on Bernie in order to make sure every single person who supports him comes out and votes for Joe Biden, whenever they're completely unable to separate that a lot of people supported Bernie for the sole reason of Medicare for All and because of his middle finger to the system. So it's fundamentally contradictory to his message to turn around and say, hey, support Joe. I think some of his supporters will agree with that, but as we saw in that Washington Post poll, 15% of his voters are going to vote for Trump because they believe in a revolutionary kind of in a way that they look at the system. And that's not on Bernie Sanders.
Right.
Bernie Sanders is espousing an ideology that appeals to the people who believe the system is screwed and that there needs to be something that's changed. And so if Biden wants those voters, or if he wants a Trump voter, he needs to be speaking to those types of concerns, and he refuses to do
What
so.
did we cover yesterday?
Yeah.
New poll that has the head-to-head very close, but Biden beating Trump. But if you dig into the crosstabs, enthusiasm, Joe Biden with the lowest number on record for a Democratic presidential candidate in terms of very enthusiastic supporters. What was it, 24%?
24%.
24%.
53%.
Right now, before any negative ads or anything has been run against Joe Biden, when he should have this whole halo as the presumptive nominee, where, you know, it was kid gloves during the primary. He didn't even sustain any real hits there, much to the, like, you know, it was to the detriment very much of Bernie Sanders and a failure in strategy and tough-mindedness there. But yeah, he comes out unscathed, and even then, 24% say they're very enthusiastic, and you have similar amounts saying they're not at all enthusiastic. This is worse on every level than where Hillary Clinton was last time around against Donald Trump, both in terms of the head-to-head. She was much further ahead of Trump than Biden is right now. And she had much higher levels. She had higher levels of enthusiastic support because people at least were excited about the first woman president. She was at least a capable spokesperson. You know, she was able to articulate her thoughts and in a coherent way. You could picture her up there on stage doing just fine. This is a very bad sign, and that's not Bernie Sanders' fault, and it's not the fault of Bernie Sanders supporters who are very energized behind, you know, their values and behind the candidate that represents those values. Like, that's not their fault, but you can see how they're already preemptively laying there. It doesn't matter if 100% of Bernie Sanders supporters turn around and vote for Joe Biden. They are still going to get blamed if he loses.
And what also strikes me there is that on that 24% number and all that, it's always better to pick a controversial or hardline position and actually stick to it and fight for it.
Yeah.
A la Trump or Bernie.
Yes.
That's how you have 53% of people who are very enthusiastic because they know.
It.
Exactly. They're like, I respect that you're going to stick to your guns and actually fight for what's mine. And I know that during the fight, I might get 20% of what I wanted. But if I stick with Joe, I'm going to get 0. And that's how people make, this is how people don't understand how people vote. And so when Joe is sitting there with a 24% number, it's because he's trying to be all things to all people. He's just kind of like, I'm going to beat Trump. We're going to keep this in place. And, you know, as I covered in my radar, we're going to get shortages to the people who need them. That's my coronavirus response. I'm like, wow, that's, you know, really
brilliant stuff there.
Really brilliant.
Why didn't we think of that?
Never thought about that one before. And if you think about that, nobody's ever going to be excited to vote for that. It's all about animus voting. And so he's got to hope that there's enough animus against Trump in order to do that. And maybe there is, but there wasn't in 2016, and it might work out again.
We tried that already.
Yeah.
Didn't work out. All right, we'll have more Rising for you after this.